It was 1991, and Joanne, Carolyn, and I, 3 Franciscan women, had just moved into a barrio in Nicaragua. The next day, some neighbors showed up at our house with a child who looked maybe about 2 years old. They knew little about her. They did know that her mom left her all day alone in a small wooden shack while she went to work as an empleada, a maid in the adjacent colonia. They thought maybe that we could do something. The mother would leave the child all day with one leg tied to a scissor bed while she went to work. Joanne and I were a bit caught as we had made plans to take the bus and join Carolyn for lunch. We didn't yet have a stove to cook, so we had planned to eat out. There weren't any phones for us to call Carolyn or to adjust our plans, so our only option seemed to take this little munchkin with us. We were a little anxious because we didn't know if her mother would return before we got back. What if we ran into her carrying her child? What if someone else recognized her being carried out of the barrio by 2 gringos? Still, we did. The awkward thing was we didn't know her name. As we sat on the bus, I would say, Maria? Guadalupe? Ana? Nothing. She didn't respond, and more amazingly, I noticed she didn't cry. She hadn't cried in the whole ordeal. That later became something that I noticed. Why cry? There wasn't anyone around to hear. Carolyn, of course, was naturally a bit surprised when we appeared with this child in tow. After telling her what had unfolded that morning, we had a good laugh. Just the day before, the Maryknoll sisters had visited us in our new home, and we all joked that one of us had to have a child because the land we had built our house on had no title. The land was an invaded settlement, so with no title, the only thing was that the house could be passed on to an heir. I, being the youngest in the crowd, was seen as the most viable option for such a task. And then poof, here appears this 20-plus-month-old child who actually looked a little like me. When the mother returned home later that day, she was told that we had her daughter with us. When she arrived, we talked with her and asked her how we and the other neighbors could maybe help her. We learned that the name of the child was Carla Vanessa. We never guessed that one. That day began a whole journey. There's not enough time to tell the whole story, but it eventually came to be that Carla Vanessa was taken to a children's home, and I became kind of like the informal guardian. Most every weekend and holiday, she came to our house. We provided her clothes and her care and the continuity, and we loved her. And yet I was limited. I couldn't adopt her. I couldn't even have her live with us full time. I would get weepy each week as we had to take her back to the children's home on the bus, as she would begin to recognize the landmarks as we would go around, and she would begin to cry. She had learned to cry out loud because somebody was there to respond. After many dramatic twists and turns, the mother taking her out of the children's home and disappearing for months, only to abandon her again, Carla was returned to the children's home in Managua, and once again we began our weekly time. Then one afternoon, a woman showed up at our house. I recognized Joan. She was a Canadian living and working in Nicaragua. She came to tell me that she was beginning the adoption process of a little girl, and it happened to be Carla Vanessa. What she came to ask me was for me to fade in the background, not to connect with Carla for a while she became Carla Vanessa's mother. I did understand, and I cried too. Joan had made a decision to be a mother. I had made a decision not to. Taking another under one's wing is a beautiful and heart-wrenchingly complicated thing to do. With Carla and many beings since, I am forever being stared down by my limitations, whether they be the inability to be one's real mother or heal the impossible and ingrained needs of one who has deep loss and abandonment, or the limitations set by choices and decisions and other commitments I have made. The unexpected adventures that come with making it up as you go along, the unbelievable learnings and memories, and the deep gratitude sit side by side with the heart feeling torn in letting go. And still, I would do it all over again. Just to say, we reconnected when Joan arrived a year or two later to invite me to Carla's graduation from kindergarten. It was a new moment, and we were new friends. And Carla now is a beautiful grown woman living and working in Canada.